Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the regular meeting, that February 5th, 2025, regular board meeting of the Board of Public Education for the City of Savannah and County of Chatham. I will first ask that we have sent the notice out. And it has been sent out. God, sent it. Ooh. Reset. And this is education. Okay. Sorry? Yes, all requirements of the Public Meetings Act have been met. Thank you. We will start with our opening exercise if we'd all stand for the national anthem. And our national anthem today will be sung by Mary Woodard Thompson, our teacher at Savannah Arts Academy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now I'll have a motion to approve the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Moss, that upon the recommendation of the superintendent and the board approve this agenda item as presented and/or amended.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Perfect. Announcements?
I also
Yes.
move that we make an amendment to the agenda and that we add item 6.06, the Proclamation Career Technical and Agriculture Education CTAE Month.
Move. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, now announcements. Announcements. We have an audit committee meeting tomorrow morning, February 6th at 8. Oh my gosh, at 8 a.m. I want to get this year over with. And tomorrow, we also have a HB 581 hearing number 1 here at 11 a.m. here in the Whitney building. We have hearing number 2 at 6 p.m. tomorrow here in the Whitney building. And we have hearing number 3 on February 10th here in the Whitney building at 6 p.m. February 11th, the Star Student and Teacher Awards banquet at the Scottish Rite off Chatham Center Drive from 11:30 until 1. February 12th, we have Georgia Day at the Savannah Civic Center from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. February 13th, fun night out. SCC PSS Night at the Ghost Pirates game at M Market Arena, 7 p.m. February 19th, we have a Finance Committee meeting. That should not be at Whitney.
Yes, we are
No.
starting at Whitney.
Oh, we are starting at Whitney. Okay, sorry. The Finance Committee meeting will be here at Whitney at 9 a.m., followed by our board retreat, which will be at Oatland Island from 11 a.m. Until 4 p.m. Okay. Is that it? We would like to, I'm sorry. And we would like to add addition to the audit committee, we'd like to announce the addition of Mr. Bryce Everett as a new committee member. We'll start tomorrow. Okay, remembrances. James Butler Jr. From Jenkins High School, date of passing 1/5/2025. Science teacher. Catherine Redden from Windsor Forest High School, school counselor on 1/14/2025. And Horace Skandrick from Butler Elementary, health and PE. Date of passing 1/26/2025. If we could all please stand for a moment of silence. And now for some good news from our superintendent.
Excited today to recognize our January Student of the Month for the month of January. This particular student is a senior at Savannah Arts Academy. The student is a member of Tri-M Society, which is the Music Honor Society. He's also a member of the National Society of High School Scholars, Beta Club, and Spanish Honor Society. He has demonstrated significant progress in math by consistently achieving a higher progression of grades on assignments and tests, showing a deeper understanding of mathematical concepts, and moving from basic comprehension to applying advanced problem-solving techniques. His nominator told us this student has a fantastic work ethic and excellent study habits, including regular practice and seeking help when needed, which has attributed to his overall success. In addition, he is dually enrolled in college classes for a second year. This particular nominator continued by saying, he's an extraordinary young man who has never allowed challenges to hinder his achievements. In fact, that is his superpower. I have witnessed him take command of his education by confidently advocating for himself and pursuing advanced learning opportunities. He enthusiastically embraces every chance to improve himself and deepen his understanding of the world around him. With a positive attitude and a fearless approach to hard work, this particular student continually exemplifies resilience and determination. In addition to his academic success, this scholar actively takes part in school sports and community service. He participates in varsity track and cross country, as well as studying martial arts. Our honoree volunteers at the Oatland Island Wildlife Center, helping with activities and events, and has entertained residents at area assisted living facilities by playing the piano and singing. When asked what motivates him to succeed, our scholar responded, I just want to constantly improve myself in all areas so that I can succeed in all of my future endeavors. I want to show people that even when you have a disability, you can do great things and succeed. Please help me congratulate the Superintendent Student of the Month for January 2025, David Rawl. David, if you'll make your...
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thanks. Thank you.
Again, join me in congratulating David, and I ask that his parents please remain standing, because we want to applaud you as well. Thank you for all you do to provide a student to us that is prepared and excited about school every day. And we are excited to have you here to recognize this celebration with us. David will continue his pursuit of a college degree by taking classes in the areas of science, music, and business. He is going to be taking home several gifts from our sponsors today, including Members First Credit Union, Advertising Specialties, Georgia Southern University, Gulfstream, and more. In addition, David and his English Language Arts class will receive copies of his favorite book donated by our sponsor, E. Shaver Bookseller. David asked to give his book to the English class he most enjoyed at Savannah Arts Academy, as he finished high school English last year and has been dually enrolled in English classes in college now. So again, we would like to congratulate David, certainly his family, his parents, and his Savannah Arts Academy family. So if Ms. Blue, who is in the audience, would please stand, and also his nominator is in the audience. Thank you so much. And David, we wish you the very best. Congratulations in your future endeavors. January was a very long month with lots of different things, to include a winter storm that we got to experience for the first time, and that was certainly exciting. But I have many other reasons for our excitement today. I'm excited to bring you my good news report. A huge thank you to Greg Parker of Parker's Kitchen for his donation to the Educate Chatham Foundation of $100,000. A true representation of Together We Can, and we certainly celebrate that partnership. And the funds for this will be contributed, or the funds that made up the $100,000 were contributed by local citizens when they purchase gas on the first Wednesday of every month at Parker's. So go get your gas on Wednesdays. 1 cent of every gallon goes to fueling the community and helping schools. These contributions, along with the proceeds from his annual golf tournament, provide the generous donation to the foundation. It is tough to put into words the commitment of Greg Partner and his company to public education. We are immensely grateful. Congratulations to all students who participated in the Chatham County Spelling Bee. We saw 40 outstanding spellers from across the district in grades 3 through 8 show off their literacy skills and high levels of comprehension. It was a battle to the very end, as 3 final spellers were knotted up for several rounds. Keela Latre from New Hampstead K-8, Patrick Bang from Garrison School for the Arts, and Nayan Ahmed from Godley Station. Eventually, it came down to a spell off between Nayan and Keela, with Keela claiming the final top spot. We wish her the best of luck as she moves on to the next level of competition. Thanks to the Chatham Association of Educators and the Savannah State University partners for their continued support of the Spelling Bee. The students at Woodville-Tompkins Technical and Career High School were excited to host a group of professional CPAs to collaborate on a Rising Professionals program to prepare students for careers in accounting. Seems like we might have a pipeline strategy here in place with interest in accounting. The group is building a comprehensive plan that combines mentorship, networking opportunities, and skill-building activities to help students transition from academic learning to the professional world. The CPAs there shared insight on industry expectations, career paths, and the importance of practical experience, while also expressing excitement about working with our amazing Woodville-Tompkins students to support their future success in accounting. Thank you to our community partners for their investment in our scholars. Thank you to the Lutzy 43 Foundation for presenting their Safe Driving Summit at Windsor Forest High School last month. Students participated in interactive breakout sessions led by first responders, law enforcement officers, trauma and rehab care professionals, and representatives from the trucking industry, giving their unique perspectives on road safety. By exposing our young drivers to these life-saving lessons and encouraging them to use the 43 Key Seconds Safe Driving Initiative to ensure they are ready to drive, we are encouraging them to make good decisions to stay safe. One more way SCCPSS is showing its commitment to the safety of our students. A shout out to Jacayla Cons and her instructor, Mr. Pack Norris, for their outstanding work on a flag cart for the dance team at the School of Liberal Studies at Savannah High. Jacayla is a student in Mr. Norris's Welding 2 class and completed the independent project-based learning challenge during the first semester. According to Mr. Norris, Jacayla has a desire to study nursing after high school, but she has never turned down an opportunity to be engaged, be involved, and work hard to complete any project, big or small, even welding. He said, "What a pleasure it is to have her in our program. Thank you to Mr. Norris for sharing his outstanding student experience." You can read about all of these stories and many more on our website. Please share them with your friends and colleagues. And I will now turn it over for a report from Professional Senate.
All right, our January meeting was held virtually since we had the snow week. The Senate reviewed 3 calendar templates created following our initial planning session last November. A survey was also conducted to gather feedback regarding certain elements of the calendar design. Considerations included start and end of term dates, options for a potential fall break, and potential for staff planning and e-learning days centered around holidays such as Veterans Day and St. Patrick's Day. At the close of the meeting, Senate members submitted feedback on the templates and potential adjustments. 2 recommendations from the Senate included the following: clearly separate staff planning days and staff training days on the school calendar. By incorporating distinct staff training days into the calendar, we can ensure that teachers have protected time to focus on planning and preparing for their classes. Also, to provide additional district-wide framework of the in-person e-learning days that are planned on the SCCPSS calendar. This will help with overlapping commitments, such as e-learning instructional time, required trainings and PLCs, planning time, and parent conferences. Senate members were asked for their interest in forming a subcommittee on school safety. 15 members have volunteered to join this group. Over the next month, we are collecting information from schools to determine current thoughts on safety and any potential needs for improvement. The School Safety Committee will review the findings and provide updates and recommendations at our next Senate meeting. And our next Senate meeting will be held on Thursday, February 20th, from 4:15 to 5:15 at Jenkins High School. Thank you.
Mr. Hediger.
Agenda, we do have your Board of Education matters, a number of items for the board to consider here. A few policy reads for you. Item 6.01 is Board Policy BBA. This is board officers. This comes under the 4-year review process. You'll notice that the primary changes here are to align language in this policy to mirror recent changes to the board policy BBAA, which stated the process for election of board members. Now, what this does is it primarily mirrors the language of the identification of the board officers. So these are the only changes for this policy. This is a first reader. We'll come back for second read in March.
Yes, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. So I see the change in the language is that, is the clarification that the superintendent can designate staff to serve in the secretary roles. How does that align with the sentence that says other officers or agents may be appointed from time to time at the board's discretion? So does that mean that the superintendent identifies someone and then the board has to, am I on the wrong one? Okay. All right, because everybody's looking at me funny. I just got to make sure that I was in the right place. So the point I'm trying to get to is there's a line that says the board makes the appointment, which we usually do in September, and then we don't mess with this again for the whole year. And then there's a line that says the superintendent can appoint someone. So my question is, does the board have to follow up with something to ratify the superintendent's appointment? Because it seems like if we didn't put it here, the superintendent would just be able to do it, and we wouldn't have to deal with it. But by putting it in the policy, it looks like you got these two things that have to work together.
Yeah, so the recommendation on that line, again, under which exactly mirrors BBAA, came from Attorney Holliday. And what we were trying to do was overcome any confusion on the board secretary role, which previously the language included the board secretary, which is a position that is hired and goes through the hiring process on a recommendation by the superintendent. And that, but if the law, the title code stipulates that the superintendent actually acts as a secretary of the board. There's also some extension of that of talking about treasurer of the board and or designee. So that line is just a flexibility component to provide some clarity on the role of the secretary as is through the process, through the recommendation of the superintendent. Now, if that creates some confusion in this particular area as opposed to where it came from under the election of officers, I mean, I could see that we could easily delete that out of there so as not to create any confusion.
I just thought about it because in January, we still do that with the current structure. We announce and appoint the secretary that in that position is the one that we have populated at this time. So if it's not confusing for anyone else at this time, I guess I will just wait till it comes back for the second time for other board members to consider whether it's an issue. For me, it just created language that had different actions that occur at different times that I didn't know if they were necessary. I understand we're trying to align with the law, and we're also trying to align with current practice. Current practice is that the superintendent does do that.
Right, right. And something that might help as well in that line about the board may appoint other agents as it sees fit. A good example is your legislative delegate. So the board appoints that annually in that January meeting as well. So while that's not necessarily an officer of the board, it is another role that the board designates in this process. So you see that language there as a little flexibility on how the board would manage that. But the key component is the officers are president, a vice president, and a vice president pro tem, as opposed to how we had previously written in the hired position of a board secretary.
I got nothing else.
Okay, all right.
So again, this is a first reader. We'll certainly take that consideration and get back and convene with staff and legal on that on the way forward. And of course, as you stated, if any board members have thoughts on that, please advise, and we'll bring it back for a second reader in March. Your next agenda item is 6.02. This is Board Policy JGCD medication. Now, the board will remember that we had previously brought this policy back for some updates, which were based on some changes in state code circulating the way we administered medication, and that the board had gone through the process of reviewing and approving that. In the process, though, recently, staff has been going through procedural reviews internally, particularly about how they audit medication, how the nursing staff audits medication. And after some discussion, it was determined that it should be included and memorialized in the administrative regulation side of this policy. So that's the primary change that you see here in that language. Also, you'll note the reference to albuterol was also added at recommendation of our school nursing team. So those are the only changes. This is an administrative regulation and a mid-period review. Moving on your agenda, 6.03. This is a policy GBRG, arrangement of substitutes. This comes to you under the 4-year policy review process. This is a first reader. We'll come back in March for second review and adoption. The primary changes that you see here are really how we manage scenarios where the options for filling substitutes in our district, if we're not able to fulfill that through the means that we are utilizing. You're all familiar that we use ESS as our substitute provider. If they're not able to 100% fill those roles of need, then there would be flexibility for the superintendent that the board would authorize to utilize other means. And some of those means are listed within that policy language as well. So those are the primary changes here. First reader would come back in March for second read adoption.
Ms. Grabowski.
I don't know that this is a policy question more. If they have to, if school administration needs to implement an alternative plan, particularly that involves the reassignment of existing staff, and that adds to their workload, is that staff compensated for that additional workload that they are taking on if they're taking on the role of a substitute in addition to their normal roles? And if not, it should be?
So it's my understanding, and maybe I can have some staff jump in, at the middle and high school levels, I believe there is compensation if a teacher uses his or her planning time to cover another teacher's class. The discrepancy is whether that's happening at the elementary level or not.
Well,
Maybe I can get, is there any additional information, Ms. Panton, that you want to add to that?
Yes, at the middle and high schools, they are on extended day agreements if someone is out. I would need to look more into the elementary. Some of this language was just more in that where we're adding this is adding this additional language supports and authorizes school administrators to create and implement a contingency plan in the event a substitute isn't available, because sometimes we just can't plan for emergency situations. So this is really just the board and policy supporting these implementations of a contingency plan.
right, and I understand, but I just, and again, I know it's more part of the practice and the implementation side of my question, but in addressing the policy, it just, because I know that does happen if, a teacher is late, then the teacher next door who happens to have a planning period says, hey, can you cover this class? And that impacts the teacher. So that teacher needs to be compensated or other, it doesn't need to just be, oh, you're available, come cover this class. So I don't know if our teacher of the year has something that which you'd like to share.
I can provide some additional clarification. So those are scenarios where there are some normal coverage responsibilities for a brief period of time, but if a teacher is providing coverage for the entire period or entire block, then there is an opportunity for supplemental pay. And then there is a category where if a teacher is serving in a long-term capacity, then they would be on an extended day agreement, and that pay is different. So you've got three kind of scenarios: temporary, which is within the normal responsibilities that a teacher may take on in terms of coverage for a colleague, for a team, for a brief period of time. Then you have an entire block or period where a teacher may provide coverage that's supplemental. And then you have, for an entire semester, if a position was vacant and a teacher took on that additional course, that would be an extended day agreement.
Yes, please.
So after COVID, the first year or two, it was especially difficult to find coverage, and I know it was a priority. Anytime we needed to cover classes during our planning period, here's the paperwork. You fill it out, you get paid. That has not happened as much recently. I don't know if that's because it's still available and maybe just not as readily communicated, or if that's something that's been kind of rolled back. But to have it be a high priority, maybe in the writing of the policy, I think is what we're talking about.
Yeah, or a regulation that accompanies a policy or something to formalize that practice so that it's clearly known and communicated.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, in some cases, you have self-contained classrooms such as elementary, where you have teachers with a full-time para, and sometimes those full-time paras have been actually substituting if that teacher is out, if anyone can't be located or placed. So there maybe needs to be something in policy regarding paying that para if we do have paras who are substitute teaching in the place of that teacher who is out. That does occur.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a first reader. Of course, we'll bring back second read adoption in the March board meeting. The next agenda item for the board's consideration is a topic that everyone is interested in. The academic school year calendar. Of course, we've been ahead of the cycle with our calendars over the last several years. So the community at large, our staff and parents really enjoy that. We did go through this particular process a little differently in trying to look at some alternate options that possibly we could consider, and ultimately we landed on a version that is now in front of the board. So today we do have the recommendation of the adoption of the 25-26 academic calendar. And again, the district has developed this calendar to meet the needs of our students, our staff, and families, and to align with state assessment timelines. The academic calendar, as proposed, does contain 180 instructional days and considers input from the superintendent's professional senate. Well, this was made up, of course, of our teacher leaders and support staff. Additional feedback was received from school principals and district staff, and a parent survey was also administered. Calendar development process considers a certain components that are unique to our market and our area that create a certain level of compression when you look at those 180 days. And some of those influential factors include the timing of the first day of school, timing for the state assessments, staff planning days that should be included on the calendar as well, remote learning days, St. Patrick's Day is a big one for us, federal holidays including Veterans Day, Thanksgiving break for 1 week, winter break for 2 weeks, and any election days also will provide an influence on the calendar. This calendar that's being recommended includes 180 instructional days, 10 staff planning days, 5 pre-planning days, 2 post-planning days. It also includes the strategic use of remote learning days, including one that you'll see on Election Day in November of the next school year. This includes an extended October fall break. There's a 4-day weekend for school students and staff. And of course, there's 1 week in Thanksgiving, 2 weeks for winter break. There's a 1-week spring break included, and this accounts also the calendar for St. Patrick's Day. Major breaks are certainly scheduled at the conclusion of winter assessments and in advance of spring assessments. The draft calendar is now presented for the board's review and adoption. District administration seeks to use this framework of the calendar for the development of the 25-26 and 26-27 academic calendars. Of course, you'd be approving the 25-26 calendar, but we're seeking to use the next 2 years, the 26-27 and 27-28 academic calendars on this framework. Thus be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the academic calendar for school year 25-26, and sorry to my correction here, and that the board also authorize the superintendent to develop the 26-27 calendars and the 27-28 academic calendars. That would get us an additional 2 years ahead, which we would bring back using this framework at a subsequent board meeting.
Moved by Dr. Ringman, seconded by Ms. Hall. Discussion. Dr. Ringman.
Thank you for bringing this forward, and also thank you for trying to continue the process of not belaboring this every single year and kind of making a carbon copy and just placing it on the calendar. I would like either the district staff or if the superintendent would like to weigh in some of her thoughts. I know this is her first calendar cycle because we already had a calendar developed for your first year. Your reimagining of what you're calling remote learning days, and then I know we've already had some conversations with district staff around that dimpled Chad of a day for teachers. That's the last day of the school year, and how you might be seeing that as a day that could be flexible depending on certain criteria and flexibility of workspace.
The first thing I'd like to do is just acknowledge the difficulty in the development of a calendar. There are a lot of competing priorities, pressures, preferences, and I'm not going to say anything is impossible, but it is very difficult to get everyone's desire into a calendar. So I appreciate all the parents and the teachers and the board and others who have weighed in on this process. And I ask that you give grace in places that you don't necessarily get all the desires that you may want. As it relates to the remote learning days, I am acutely aware of the challenges and the opportunities that remote learning brings. I think what complicates it even further is when you also have a season of hurricanes and snow, which then add on to prescribed remote learning days, additional makeup days, where we use the remote learning framework as a makeup day. And I understand fully the challenges that that places on parents who may be trying to be at-home teachers or supervise their children. And in the current way that we do it, I also understand the challenges that it presents to our teachers who may be trying to remotely make themselves available to students while also tending to other district or classroom obligations. We need to reimagine it, and I'm not going to be able to provide a lot of detail about what that looks like, but I would like to open that opportunity up and better define what that day is. I think when I transitioned into the district, it was referred to as an e-learning day, which to me carried a heavy connotation that kids were using computers at home and they were engaged with a teacher at some level. And I think over the last year, I have found that not to be the consistent methodology. So I have asked the team, we've already had some internal dialogue about what a reimagining could look like, but I am not at a place where I would say I would like to do away with remote learning. It is a way of the world. My own 2 children are in college now, and they have remote classes that I pay full tuition for. They do not, in many cases, have access to a teacher face-to-face or even by dial-in, right? They're expected to be able to do some level of independent work on their own. And so I think as we prepare our students for choice-filled lives, we have to begin to provide those opportunities for them so that they have a readiness to engage in reality that they will be walking into in the near future, as virtual learning and virtual work are now a part of how life is lived. in the world today. So I'm not at a place where I would say we want to get rid of those days. I want to leverage those days, but I want to leverage them in a reimagined way, and we haven't defined that yet. I also am aware of the debate around makeup days, and that has been a point of interesting contention as we've navigated hurricanes and most recently a winter storm. This is one of those issues that's very difficult to navigate because while we have designated makeup days on our calendar, which typically are listed as the week of Thanksgiving and the week of spring break, many families and many teachers plan vacations during those weeks. And so when we talk about wanting to then flip those days and use them as makeup days, we run into conflicts with staff maybe not being fully available because they've planned a cruise or to go visit a family member somewhere else. And we're also competing with families that may have planned trips, and we look at very low attendance on those days. The same with half days. Anytime we have tried to do a half day, our attendance drops significantly in the district. So the challenge with makeup days is where do you place them on the calendar that doesn't conflict with someone's already pre-planned vacation, where we can have high attendance from students and enough supervision from staff, and then how do you weigh in the fact that there were state of emergencies and we do have a waiver? So I don't know that I have a very strong answer for that. Know that that is a place where I'm still grappling, but I do believe as we move forward, there will have to be quarterly a threshold that we look at, and if we miss a certain amount of days within that quarter period or within whatever the designated time period is, we do have to look at making up days. This has been a choppy year, and I'm not sure the influence that that will have on our student learning, but I am as concerned as others have been around that topic. So I think the public can expect some additional clarity around when we and how we decide which days get made up and when they get made up, I think is the other piece. And I think the other question is how they get made up, because there are lots of ways. You don't have to have a full makeup day on a designated day that we've already set off. You could add minutes to a school day. You could add a half-day Saturday. You could add, like, there are different ways to get at how you make up time. Was that the...
Wonderful, and I was going to ask about makeup days, and you got there too.
Okay, thank you.
The last day of school for teachers.
So,
If
yes,
you
the
could-
last day of school for teachers. We have looked at this as recent, I believe it was yesterday. Mr. Hediger was in my office, and we were trying, and we'll continue to try to figure this out to the best level possible. What I would like to offer to teachers is we could look at how we could flexibly use that day. I think members of my team know that I don't necessarily believe that people have to show up in a place to work and to learn. That work and learning can occur from many places, including your home. And so if teachers are all finished and they finished all their activities that they need to close out school, I could see that last day being a opportunity for teachers to plan from home and provide evidence of that planning from home so that they did not necessarily have to show back up at a school building on the 26th. So looking at that day, again, the same way we think about student remote learning, how can we leverage the reality that people don't have to show up in a specific location to do their jobs. I have gotten much work done in the middle of a Panera Bread. In fact, that is where I tend to be most productive, not in the office. So just wanting you all to know that we are looking, should this calendar be passed, we're looking at how we can offer our teachers some flexibility around the use of that day to work, but maybe not to show up in a traditional manner for work.
Thank you so much.
It may help, too, for future consideration that the days of Memorial Day, where Memorial Day falls is what created the conundrum in this particular calendar. In 2027, Memorial Day is on May 31st. And in 2028, Memorial Day is on May 29th. So we have more days in the calendar, and I feel, without going through and specking out all the days, but knowing that there are more days in May for those years, there's a strong possibility that this wouldn't be an issue in the next future calendars.
Ms. Hall.
Dr. Watts, I'm very pleased with your broad expanse of thought in terms of our teachers and how learning happens. And the reason I approve of this particular calendar is because I think it pays a lot of attention to the integrity of our instructional delivery. The more most of our students are in front of their teachers, the better to me. And to me, this calendar provides that opportunity best for them.
Thank you. Dr. Tanya Howard Hall.
Yes, could you just talk a little about us being a Swiss school district? Although this calendar is based on 180-day instructional time, we do have the flexibility to not make up those days, if you can just explain.
Yeah, so the Board of Public Education has entered into a contract with the Georgia Department of Education to be a waiver district. So we call it a strategic waiver school system, i.e. SWIS in the acronym. One of the things that was built in there was the waiver for the requirement of the school year calendar, school year, school day. So the current statutory requirements on school year, school day in Georgia is 180 days. We've all been very familiar with that, but we do have a waiver built in. Now, it doesn't mean that just because that waiver is in the contract that it automatically is going to be used. One of the things that we wrote actually in our policies as well, we're one of the few districts in the state that has a policy on the use of waivers. One of the things we wrote in that policy was if there are any major components that are within the contract that the district seeks to use that has broad scoping impact, and the calendar is one of them, the academic calendar, the Board of Education would vote in a meeting to approve that. So if we wanted to use a waiver in this process, it would be written into the calendar. We'd also have it in the agenda item to say that the board also approves the use of a waiver for less than 180 days. Now, I will say that in the general surveys that we've done, initially talking with the professional senate, many of them felt that 180 days was important. There was some openness to saying, well, maybe less than would be okay, but there wasn't an overwhelming push to say we should have less than 180 days. Our school principals, our building leaders also said the same. 180 days was important. So these are some things that in the consideration of the calendar, when we went through this whole process and created a couple versions, we used 180 days. The other part that is really important in this whole discussion is having that waiver built in, and if you do have storm disruptions and weather events that create outages, and it could be anything as far as we have to evacuate and you have no access to technology or the ability to be able to log in and do remote work, then the consideration of using a waiver is very helpful in that. And as the superintendent said, that's a grappling point because we have always and consistently said we're also going to name certain days on the calendar that are currently existing where there is no school where we could make up a day, presumably. But that has been met with resistance over the years when you start saying we're going to actually levy the makeup day in Thanksgiving. So depending on the circumstances, it's all different. Having that waiver in the toolkit to be able to use if the circumstances warrant the need for it is a real benefit for us. But if you build a calendar that's already behind, say 178, 176 days, and then you have storm outages, you're already really kind of losing a lot of instructional time.
Dr. Howard Hall. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Grabowski.
Thank you, Dr. Watts, for some of your comments, particularly about remote learning, because that's something I know we've all talked about. I mean, I think it makes sense, and I was glad to hear you say that the makeup days may not necessarily be in the classroom, because it seems like that could be a remote learning opportunity as well. On the May 26th, got lots of comments and feedback, and appreciate the team providing all of the survey results, because that was great to see. I know that some of our teachers will do continuing education during the summer, where they go to a conference or something like that. Is there a possibility that that could count towards that day? So that would be
Yes.
great. Okay. So I definitely support not necessarily requiring them to come into the classroom building on that day. I agree with Ms. Graham about the specifying the planning versus professional development days, if there's a way to be able to do that.
Working on that right now.
Fantastic. And then, when are grades typically due at the end of the year? Because I have heard that they are due like a full week ahead of when we have our last day of school. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the grades are generally due before the last day of school.
So my question is, what happens that last week of school? Because that just seems, and in high school, it's a whole nother level because you get graduation that coincides. And so that last week of high school is just a bust all the way around, which maybe that's okay. I don't know. But to have grades due a week before school is out, you're missing 5 educational days. So I'm not necessarily saying that that's a nut we're going to crack with this calendar, but I think it's something we need to think about because, as a parent sending your kid to school to go watch movies for the last week of class, it's like, that's a week.
And I do want to clarify, when you say the last day of school, the last prior to teachers' last day. So their grades are being finalized during that last week. So there is an opportunity in many cases for students who may not be currently passing to complete remaining assignments. So there is an opportunity, and there should be during that last week of school, opportunities for students to complete those tasks.
It's
That may
more
be an
like a
exception with
window.
our seniors, but generally speaking, many of the assignments are complete during that time. But the finalizing of grades in Power School does not happen until that last teacher work day.
Right, and I get that, but it still just seems to me that we're not really getting a full 180 days when we don't have that last week.
I think some of what you're saying could be accurate. I see it more as a window. We say there's a designated endpoint for grades, but teachers are still accepting grades. Teachers are still updating grades. It also gives us time to assess whether all grades are in before the teacher actually goes home. So we need a little bit of grace to do some of that, but I really think ultimately what fixes that is just the culture in which the teacher has in his or her classroom, that learning is going to continue until the
Through
last
the end.
day, and
Right.
we're not going to watch movies.
Right, and so I appreciate that. And so I appreciate in the resolution that we want to use this as a framework for the next 2 years. And I know Dr. Brinkman's going, woo, woo. I'm a little bit hesitant to do that, and I'm also hesitant to push that to next month. Why do we need to adopt the following 2-year calendar? Because the resolution says we're going to come back at the subsequent board meeting and adopt those next 2-year calendars. I don't see, I think it's great to have it done earlier than we did this year, but these are some of the things that I would like to better understand when we're looking at our calendar. And the other thing, which I've already shared with the superintendent, is we have May 26th is always like our limit point, and I would rather see our teachers not have to come back into the into the school building in the month of July, even if that means we go into early June, which I know is like a total thing, and Dr. Ring's about to jump out of his chair, but that's just my 2 cents that I don't know that we need to rush into using this as a framework for 2 more years.
Keep in mind, too, that the state assessment window plays a big role in this as well, so,
And that's helpful, and to have that information in the context of this calendar would be helpful.
yes.
So would you like to amend?
Potentially, but I think
Okay.
continued discussion is warranted.
Okay, all right. Ms. Hall, then Dr. Brinkman.
Just very quickly, I have found out that several schools that I keep an eye on have project-based learning going on. And some of the best learning, some of the best times are held by the children at the end of the school year. So in terms of spreading best practices, those schools who don't have those kind of activities, the principals need to get with each other, the teacher senate needs to get with each other, but we have some wonderful programs going on for kids that last week of school.
That really stamps what the superintendent was saying about the culture of the classroom and how you utilize those days, because they are still instructional days, notwithstanding the timeline to get grades in. We will also add that in our feedback with the professional senate, superintendent received some comments from teacher leaders as well that said, please don't end the school year after Memorial Day or push it into June, because then you really start to lose the focus of the students. Graduations are done, the grades are clearly in, the state
Why do
assessment windows are
graduations have to be
clear.
that week? Why do graduations have to be then? Like, if the school year gets put, like, why are we're setting that own parameter for ourselves that we have to always have graduations the third week of May?
Well, the other influential factor for us in determining that schedule is the availability of the
Right,
arena.
and I
So that's
understand
what's
that.
driven that.
And that was the legacy from the Civic Center, but
Yeah.
is that true still? Like, these are just questions that I have that I want to better understand, particularly if you're asking me to take action for the next 3 academic years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Dr. Brinkman.
I fully agree on the fundamental, like, what's happening those last weeks. We could go deeper and be like, what's happened in the last month? They're done with GMAS. That's how the state grades us. That's what gets in the paper on the reading level and this level and that level, and that's done at the end of April, first day of May.
Yep.
I don't understand why the state does it that way, but I'm definitely, Dr. Brinkman is not asking that we start the school year in whatever, because in a perfect world, you should end school right before GMAS. And that should be your final, because that should be, we have learned for 180 days preparing for that state test, but the state cuts out 20 plus learning days because they tell us we got to do it then. Why? I don't know. Maybe somebody smarter in the room knows that. But I mean, fundamentally, those months, what?
she's about to jump out of her chair.
I mean, those weeks, we're doing learning, but we know that there's going to be learning loss over the summer preparing for that. So, yeah. So I will defer to the resident expert teacher in the room.
Yes. Ms. Graham.
I just wanted to jump in real quick. AP testing runs through May 15th, which gives us 1 week after that to wrap up for the year. So just as far as if we're talking about testing. And
Yeah, I knew
you're asking
AP
about
was on a
testing, so-
different, yes. It
Right,
at least
right.
is closer to the end.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's important to keep that for, yes. So I guess I would ask if we could amend the motion to just remove the "and be it further resolved" statement in the resolution, so that we're not tied to coming back and adopting another 2 years
I
in
second
a
that
month.
amendment.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Okay. Yes.
I just like the teachers across the district to brainstorm what are some wonderful things we could be doing with our kids after the academic year is pretty much set up. I know that there are many 3rd, 4th, 5th graders in my district who have never been to the Massey Center. It's not planned. If the teacher doesn't think of it, it's not something that's mandated. So half of our kids get these field trip experiences. The other half haven't been anywhere. So there are so many things that could be done outside of the classroom that will help our students if we can get it all, Dr. Watts, in some sort of synchronized way.
But don't we have limitations on field trips during the last week of school?
I believe we do, but
We
we need
do.
to, we need to,
See?
we need to change
That's
that
what we need
policy.
to
But
fix.
that's something we could fix. Yeah, those are self-imposed obstacles. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. This is a lively discussion on the calendar, it always is. I would like, when we look at these other calendars, that look at the other years, that we bring in all the information that we know affects our decision. And contracting is one of them. And if we don't want to deal with the temporal limitations of contracting, and the calendar of other organizations, then we need to consider what other factors we're willing to waive. And that is, do we want to be outside at one of our athletic complexes? Maybe not. Some people think that's awesome. Some people are like, no, I don't want an outdoor graduation. So if we don't want to be constricted to the contracting policies of the institutions that can host our graduations, and we don't want to incur the additional cost of setting up and breaking down or covering an outdoor venue, all the things that we don't have to deal with by having 3 days, 4 days back to back, then we need to be prepared to talk about that. Because that's part of what has shoehorned us into the schedule that we have, is saving the money on decorating, having them compress in one facility that's completely ADA accessible and that is weather resistant and doesn't fall within the instructional time. We have lots of other flexibilities if we want to waive those criteria. And if we don't, then we can make decisions knowing that we are choosing one over the other.
Any more discussion on the amendment? Okay. All in favor of the amendment? Okay. All right. Now, okay.
So the recommendation as revised will be, thus be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the proposed academic calendar for school year 2025-2026.
There you go. Okay.
Clarification question.
Yes.
On the nuances that we talked about as far as the flexibility of the 26th and the potential to designate specific, are those things that can be clarified or modified after the official adoption, or do we need to include
Correct.
some
Yes.
language around that in the motion?
Right, so the board is not voting on the management decision on work calendar, for example. So how we manage and implement the use of staff planning days, that would be a function of the superintendent administration. The board is voting on the dates of these calendars as proposed. So for all the reasons that have been previously stated, the calendar is plotted the way that it is. We do have one day to get the 10 staff planning days on this calendar without putting it somewhere else that would lose an instructional day. That day falls the day after Memorial Day, because Memorial Day in this particular year in 2026 falls sooner than it normally would in the 27 year and the 28 year.
Right.
So it's where we find ourselves, but the superintendent has stated that we are open administratively, and we've had internal discussions about how we would manage that to allow teachers to use a remote work option on that last staff planning day.
Okay, I just want to make sure that in taking this official action, we don't inadvertently limit any ability to have some flexibility around that day. So we're comfortable with that. Okay.
All right. Call a question. All in favor? We got a second. I second. Yeah. Here we go. All in favor? Mr. Smith? I'm in favor. Yes. Mr. Smith says yes. All right. Thank you very much.
And turning the agenda to the board president for proclamation, item 6.05, National School Counseling Week.
Dr. Ringman.
Thank you. It is my honor. National School Counseling Week. Proclamation. Whereas school counselors are employed in our schools to help students reach their full potential. And whereas school counselors are actively committed to helping students explore their abilities, strengths, interests, and talents, as these traits relate to career awareness and development. And whereas school counselors help families focus on ways to further the academic, career, and social emotional development of their children. And whereas school counselors work with teachers and other educators to help students explore their potential and set realistic goals for themselves. And whereas school counselors seek to identify and utilize community resources that can enhance and complement comprehensive school counseling programs and help students become productive members of society. And whereas comprehensive school counseling programs are considered an integral part of the educational process that enables all students to achieve success in school. Therefore, we do proclaim February 3rd through 7th, 2025 as National School Counseling Week. In witness thereof, we officially affix the seal of the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Public Education to this proclamation on this 5th day of February 2025. Signed, Mr. Roger Moss, Board President, Dr. Denise Watts, Superintendent.
I'll accept a motion. Moved and seconded. All in favor? And I know that we have some school counselors here today, so will you please come?
So I'll let you fight who gets to take it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for advocating. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You did advocating. Appreciate you. Thank you.
And we have another proclamation.
Happy Career and Technical Education Month. Whereas February 1st through 28th, 2025 has been designated Career Technical Agricultural Education, CTAE, month by the Association for Career and Technical Education, and whereas CTAE offers students the opportunity to gain the academic, technical, and employability skills necessary for true career readiness, and whereas students in CTAE programs participate in authentic, meaningful experiences that improve the quality of their education and increase their engagement and achievement, and whereas CTAE provides students with career exploration and opportunities early in their educational experience, which enables them to make informed and beneficial decisions about their academic coursework and pursue established programs of study and career pathways. Whereas leaders from business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to addressing the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with careers in critical and growing CTAE-related fields, such as advancing manufacturing, cybersecurity, energy, healthcare, information technology, transportation, and whereas CTAE prepares students for these and other fulfilling careers by offering integrated programs of study that link secondary and post-secondary education and lead to the attainment of industry-recognized credentials, and whereas CTAE programs ensure that employers have access to a qualified and thriving workforce, ensuring our nation is a strong and competitive economy. Therefore, we do now proclaim February 1st through 28th, 2025 as CTAE month. In witness thereof, we officially affix the seal of the Savannah-Chatham County Board of Education to this proclamation on the 5th day of February 2025. And I'd just like to add this. CTAE pretty much dispels the myth that we do not provide fulfilling careers for our students. In other words, in the words of the old trades, a lot of times I hear in the community, we used to have shop, we used to have home ec, and you all aren't offering trades. We offer fulfilling careers, and CTAE actually dispels that myth. We offer the 4 E's, and we talk about this often: enrollment to post-secondary education, employment, a lucrative, in some cases, employment for those who become welders and work in other fields, enlist in military as well as entrepreneurship. So we know that we are very proud of our CTAE program. Dr. Angie Lewis is our guru, and I most certainly hope that she is cross-training a lot of employees and staff because she has a wealth of information and knowledge. So thank you very much for everything that you're doing for our CTAE program.
Okay, executive motion. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Please come forward, Dr. Lewis.
So come back up to get the certificates.
We gotta go around. Lap number 2.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve our consent agenda. Been moved? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? No. All in favor? Thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon. Agenda item 8.01, budget transfer for academic supplement plan. In support of the district goals to provide competitive compensation, promote equity, and support retention and recruitment initiatives, a budget transfer is requested to implement supplemental academic pay for the extra time and work contributions of teacher, staff leaders who serve in one of the 9 lead positions that exist at each school. This supplement accounts for nearly 800 individuals not related to athletics. These academic supplements apply to specific priority academic roles that provide work duties beyond regular job-related responsibilities, including positions such as grade chairs, department heads, ESOL coordinators, RTI and testing coordinators, social media, website, newspaper, yearbook, and band and choral directors. The Academic Supplement Roles Administrative Guidebook outlines additional duties eligible for supplements. Staff now request a transfer of funds to create supplement budgets for each respective school site. The summary of the proposed budget transfer is as follows. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the requested budget transfer in the amount of $924,155 for the FY25 academic supplement plan as described.
It's moved and seconded. Discussion, Dr. Hoskins, round in Ms. Grabowski.
Thank you. My question is about how these positions were identified. I mean, I understand the nature of the academic support that's in these. I could also imagine someone who is supervising Quiz Bowl or something else that is a really academically driven competition or robotics could also be seen as being aligned with an academic supplement. So I guess there's 2 questions. Are these the exclusive roles in the supplement, and how did we decide the roles that would apply?
There are some additional roles. This process actually started before the pandemic. It got kind of delayed during the pandemic, but I'm going to ask the academic team. They worked within the last 12 months to identify some additional roles that we did not start out with when we started this process. So Mr. Butler can take it from here.
Yeah, I think you captured it well. So this is work that has started a few years ago, and so this is really the culmination and the implementation of the academic supplemental plan. So there was a working group that identified those key academic roles and responsibilities in schools. And so our team this year was really tasked with refining that plan for implementation. However, our continual work includes looking at additional positions that have been developed over the last few years and even this year as part of our academic supplement plan for SY 25-26. There are some additional positions that are not included in this academic supplement plan that were already receiving supplements, but part of our work is reviewing the current landscape and additional responsibilities that we know our site-based staff have to ensure that we're considering that in our ongoing academic supplements.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I mean, I did not think it was arbitrary, but it's good to know what the method was. And if somebody asked, this is somewhat identified democratically by this working group. So thank you.
And many of our site-based staff have inquired about some of the positions that they have. So we've been taking that feedback and we'll continue to do so.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ms. Grabowski and then Dr. Brinkman.
So similar line as Dr. Hoskins-Brown. I remember years ago when we were working on the strategic plan, this conversation came up quite a bit. So I'm glad to see this come forward. I would ask, and it not necessarily right now, and I appreciate the clarification, Mr. Butler, if clubs are also included in these supplements, our teachers who are leading clubs, particularly that are after school, do you know offhand if they're included?
So they're not currently included in this particular version.
Okay.
It is something that we're going to take a look at, but I think it's also important to note that we are mindful of the many responsibilities, and so we have a guideline that we use that serves as that indicator that says, based on all of the duties and responsibilities and the time commitment, this is what would be considered a position where we would provide a supplement. But we'll be, again, reviewing that in our current landscape to see what those additional roles and responsibilities. But as it currently stands, those extracurricular clubs and activities, those sponsors, they're not included in this plan.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear we're looking at it, and I also appreciate the objectivity that it sounds like you're trying to create so that teachers know what's a supplement and what's not. I think that's extremely helpful for our staff. I know many of our staff do it simply because they love it and they love our students. But I think providing that clarity is really exciting. The last comment I'll make is I am just so grateful to represent a district that places high value on all of these. To be able to say that we have music and band and art throughout our district, even though we don't get the funding from the state to do so. It's one of the things that I highlight every opportunity that I get. So thank you to the team for continuing to move that forward and for recognizing the extra effort that goes into providing these great opportunities for our scholars.
Dr. Brinkman.
I will continue the kudos that Dr. Grabowski, doctor now, ended with, because you get your board packet and you're reading through and then you get warm and fuzzy. Like, this is one of these things that I'm just like, it's taken a while. We don't move quickly. We're a big ship, tiny rudder. But it feels so good to be a part of something when you know you're moving the needle in the right direction to value people who are going above and beyond, enriching the lives of our students, making those connections. And the vast majority of them have continued to do it for decades, probably, without a supplement. This just makes it a little bit easier. And gosh, maybe it's, I could definitely see some of them saying, now I have a supplement and I can buy another thing for this club. It's not even for, they'd be like, now I can get that thing that I've been wanting for this group. That's the type of staff and teachers that we have that work for us. So I'm just so pleased, both on the front of doing right by our people, but also, as Dr. Butler said multiple times, and it's been echoed, that it's an objective process. And we're continuing to look at what that looks like. What is the threshold to add other people to this list? And not have to tell somebody, well, you don't work with the right student group to get a supplement. That should sound wrong. So thank you so much to the superintendent, to all the staff that have worked on this, and to my fellow board members who will support this unanimously.
Absolutely. Mr. Kachmar.
So I just want some clarity on this, and just to be clear, I fully support it. And I'm gonna do what Brinkman tells me to do, just like never. So in the past, I've made a big fuss about coach supplements and athletic supplements, and then supplements for teachers who volunteer for Quiz Bowl and go spend 4 days in Columbus with their kids and things like that. And I thought we had done supplements separately from that. There's a pay scale or a supplement scale for coaches, but we had also
We started the process.
we had done something,
We did.
but we never implemented it.
We started the process for some of the staff, but we didn't. We added additional staff since the initial onset.
Okay,
That was a presentation, like I said, probably a year or two before the pandemic, and we started because it was a board hot topic item. So we did start with some. We increased some supplements, again, like we did for athletics. But since that time, we added a few more positions than we initially started with.
Understood, but we periodically evaluate athletic supplements and coach pay, regular season playoff kind of thing. But I thought back then we also added some supplements for non-athletic extra stuff, the Quiz Bowl coach, the robotics club teacher who went to Augusta for several days. I thought we were doing some supplements for them already. And my question was, now I'm nervous, are we not? But is this supposed to be a roll-up? These are all the supplements we're doing now, replacing anything we've done previously? Or is this an and? This is an and.
This is the and. There's some other supplements that are already out there. We have a document, it's about 23 pages. The guideline document we're talking about, we would be more than happy to share that with board members. So this is in addition to those supplements that are already out there. So this is an increase of the now $124,000 to go along with the other supplements that are already in place.
But I see this as fundamentally different too. These are structural positions that require regular additional effort and work over and above. That's the department head is different than I'm going to volunteer to be a Quiz Bowl supporter. They're both equally important, but we already do the Quiz Bowl supporter, I hope.
That's what I want to check on.
Yeah,
because I thought we were doing that already.
And the athletic side, I'm sure. The
Yeah.
Quiz Bowl, some of the teams, let us double check on that.
Because it was totally, the reason it was a hot topic was it's not fair for a teacher to say, I'm going to go be an assistant X sport coach and get some more money, but I'm going to be a robotics coach and not get anything. And so we were trying to equitize the extra effort because they're both important anyway, we need clarity on that.
The other position, the other supplements, the original supplements, right.
Okay, so I have Ms. Grabowski, Dr. Howard Hall, then Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Just a quick request. I know we've got the second phase of our compensation study that's underway, so that when we get that study and kind of the compilation of everything together, if we could add this information as a part of that report so that we can see the full package, that would be helpful.
Well, it does, but I want to manage expectations, and maybe Dr. Panton may have an answer. I don't know if a part of their study is looking at supplements.
No, it's not necessarily as a part of their study, but that we get this information alongside.
Side by side.
Yes.
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 Okay, I got it.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, have we considered our emergency response team? But many times nurses are required to attend games and provide assistance as needed for supplemental, and I don't, they're not being paid overtime to my understanding, just based on their salary?
So I could answer this from each school has an emergency response team lead. While they are currently not included in this supplement plan, that is a position that we are considering in our future plan. I cannot speak to while the nurse is on the emergency response team, along with several other key members, when it comes to after-school activities or athletics, we do have athletic trainers. Now, there are some scenarios where our nurses may serve as a substitute or support in some capacity, and so they are compensated in that way. But the nurse is not a part of this academic supplement plan. But an emergency response team lead is at each school, and that is something that we're looking at in our next iteration of a supplemental plan.
And we do have Lisa Wilson here that can expound on that. I'm not sure if now's the time, but she's the expert in that area. I see her sitting out there.
They are compensated.
Good afternoon. I was stating that Mr. Butler is correct. The nurses that work with athletics to assist those services are supported and compensated for that time. We have approximately, I think, 11 nurses that are working in that capacity now, attending practices and games to support our athletes. As far as emergency response team leaders, not all ERT leaders are nurses. Many of them are other staff members who have a full day's work ahead of them when they walk into the building. We are in the business as nurses of saving lives and providing safety and encouraging those around us to be strong in their skill set that will help save lives in the event of an emergency. And I can tell you that the Savannah-Chatham County Public School System school nurse team fully supports compensation for emergency response team leaders. They are our wing men and wing women in cases where lives could be in jeopardy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. I also recall the conversation or the energy around supplements that Mr. Kachmar is referring to. And if I recall correctly, the issue was that everyone who volunteers to do something outside the school day with young people wasn't getting a supplement. Some people were, some people weren't. I understand that this is the academic supplement. There were others like, cheerleading coaches and that sort of thing. We were trying to ascertain in that discussion exactly who was getting supplements and what level of effort or activity qualified a supplement. So I think that's what some of these questions are getting to. And the people who are not getting a supplement are probably going to be the ones we're going to hear from, who are going to want to advocate for themselves. So if we could have a definitive list of who gets a supplement, who doesn't, and what is the emerging source of criteria that we're using, because I think we all have the hearts to say that eventually everybody who says, I'm going to do something after school, before school, that adds to extracurricular enhancement, we would like to support them. And that's one of the reasons that people don't volunteer to do extra activities, and some incentives that are offered by third parties, by community partners, fail because you can't get a teacher to sign on to be the advocate because it's just one more thing for them to do uncompensated. Yes. So if we could know that information next time we talk about this, it will probably be helpful. Yes. Thank you.
Dr. Brinkman.
Academic supplement is great, so thank you. We're taking baby steps.
Dr. Brinkman.
I would just ask maybe, I think the February 19th Finance Committee meeting's kind of heavy, but definitely before we set our budget,
yes,
if we could have an inventory from budget. I don't want names. Names is bad. Positions outside of the duties set forth in a contract, because our teachers and our staff have contracts. These are duties that are outside of that contract that they have taken on. What positions are we currently compensating? What other positions have we figured out in our inventory? And I would think between finance and HR, we should be able to have some inventory, and we can look at, what are our objectives and how do we as a board feel that people should be compensated, so that we can, we found money here. How much more do we need to find to make it equitable for those positions that we and the district feel move a needle, enrichment, but fall outside of the contract duties of our salaried, employees? Yeah. HR and finance can definitely present that at finance. You don't have to do it, superintendent.
All right. Okay, any other discussion? Yes.
I just wanted to say a quick thank you on behalf of staff for taking this so seriously and making great strides towards recognizing the extra efforts that staff are making outside of the regular school day. So thank you all very much.
Wonderful. All right. Sorry, friends. Yes. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor? All right. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. The financial statements that you received in your packets this month covered us through December 31st year-to-date, which was 50% of our fiscal year and 40% of the school year. For Fund 100, our general revenues, property tax collections are at 60% compared to 62.6% last year. Overall revenues, we're at 56.5% of budget, which is also a little bit lower than our collections last year, which was at 58.5%. Our general fund expenditures, this month I want to highlight energy expenditures. We are at 43.6% of budget, which is higher than we were the year before at 41%. Teacher salaries expenditures remain the same at 37% of the budget. Paraprofessionals' salary expenditures are lower at 31% of our budget compared to 36% and 32% from the prior year. Overall, our total expenditures are at 39% compared to about 37% the year before. Outside of that, we have nothing else to report. We're in all of our other funds, we're in pretty good shape. If you have any questions.
Mr. Kaczmar.
This is a very odd question, but that's what you get from me sometimes. Has there been any discussion in your kind of municipal association groups about potential tax impacts of tariffs, of all of the changes coming from the new administration, how that might trickle down to impact on, especially on some of the tax collections that could be in jeopardy if goods stop flowing for a while? Have you, in any of your municipal organizations or trade organizations, is there any discussion or forecasting on what the next year might look like, or is it too early to tell?
Speak on that, Larry.
We haven't heard anything as far as the organizations that we are affiliated with, and it just may just be too early. There hasn't been any chatter out there yet.
Mm-hmm.
I would just ask if you do get some prognostication from
Yes.
those groups, that maybe you share it with us as we go through the budgeting process
Yes.
for 25 and beyond.
Yes.
Thanks.
Question.
Mr. Smith?
Question. Thank you for your report. Thank you for your report. With the, since Mr. Sean opened this door, I'm going to kind of walk in it a little bit more. With the possibilities of changes to Title I funding and things of that nature, I would like to ask a plethora of questions. One being, can you tell me how much or what amount of salaries are accommodated by Title I funding? Also, I would like for you to tell me if there are any talks about what will we do if there are any changes, significant changes to that that program.
To respond, I actually sent an email earlier to my fellow staff members. We plan to have a response or presentation on the 19th, if that's okay, to bring to the board, just to talk about the types of federal programs, what they do, the number of positions that are involved, and what type of budgets that they have. So we do want to kind of bring that together in a summary to board so we can list all of them, and we can have the directors talk about their programs and talk about their initiatives. So we want to give you the kind of the big picture and not just piecemeal it.
Awesome. And would you also be able to tell us how many employees would be impacted by that? Thank you so much.
The number of employees for each program, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Just add, I can say that for a fact with Title I, we know that what will happen with those positions, they'll become state-paid employees. So a lot of vacancies that we have more than likely will be filled if we have teachers who are currently funded through Title I for those teachers. In the event that something really goes south and we lose Title I funding, those administrative positions, they will, again, be offered state-paid positions to basically go back in the classroom.
I think that's important for our community to be aware of, our employees as well. Thank you.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Also, there's so many court cases coming up that this is going to be a rolling information situation. So we'll need to just stay tuned and see from day to day. Try not to panic and just see how things go.
Agenda item 9.02, startup costs in Fund 100, budget transfer. Here, we're just trying to establish startup costs for the new Bloomingdale Elementary and the new Windsor Forest High School. The budget transfer is transferring $1.2 million to various supply and equipment accounts for both of those schools. If I'm not mistaken, we're doing $750,000 for the high school and $500,000 for the elementary school. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the recommended budget transfer in the amount of $1,250,000 for FY25 startup costs to support the new Bloomingdale Elementary School and Windsor Forest High School as shown above.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
This
Dr.
is
Berman.
just, this, and this might just be me. The term expendable equipment just is odd and expendable. I mean, I understand that it's FF&E. Just the expendable side of it just sounds like, we got it. Yeah, just toss it here, toss it there. It's expendable. I don't know if, I know that's probably that's probably
It's
a
a state
financial.
term.
Yeah, it's a term. I don't know if we just, down at the bottom, expendable equipment are these things rather than just, we're just buying some computers that we're going to have and then we'll just throw them away. So, yeah, I know it's actually the desks and things like that, but it just comes across as like, it's just expendable.
What is the other items beside FF&E? So it's not the desk and the big items, the major items that will last more than 5 years. Is really for, calculators, projectors, that type of stuff.
Oh, yeah, I don't
The small stuff.
I don't know if we did a
Normally
little
what costs
asterisk at the
low.
bottom that says, yeah.
Dr. Howard Hall.
And back with Title I, if it has a life expectancy of less than 1 year, it's not, it's not considered as expendable. It's non-expendable.
Any other discussion? There being none, all in favor? Good. Thank you.
Item 9.03, Title IV, a student support and academic enrichment grant. The Georgia Department of Education has allotted Savannah-Chatham County Public Schools $1,380,206 for the federal Title IV-A student support and academic enrichment funds for FY25. Below is a summary of the proposed adjustment for the grant. Thus be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the budget amendment shown above in the amount of $814,711 to align the Title IV-A student support and academic enrichment budget with the grant allocation as approved by the Georgia Department of Education.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I have a question. This is based on a federal grant?
I believe this is.
21st century?
The Title IV is, yes. Any of the Title programs are federal grants. So
Through the Department of
it comes through the
comes
Georgia
through-
Department of
but
Education. Yeah, just like Title I. Title I comes through the Georgia Department of Education.
So we are 90% we're getting this?
As of today, yes, sir.
All right. I just want the public to know that this is another
Yes.
question mark federal grant.
Yes, this is a question mark. We were talking more about it on the 19th.
All right.
Yes,
Oh, go on.
Mr. Moss.
I just wanted to know, is there a specific time when it comes? April 1st? When do we expect the funds to be in place?
This grant is currently in place. This is just an additional award. So this grant is currently in place.
In place. We
Yes,
have
ma'am.
the funds already.
Yes, we have some
Oh,
funds
we do
already.
have,
This is
we have
additional
some of,
funds.
we don't have all of the funds.
Right, we don't.
There you go.
This grant is reimbursable, so as we spend money, we can ask for reimbursement. This is just an additional funding for the grant.
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Where I'm going with this. So we're approving extending the amount that we would incur, the expenses we would incur that we would seek reimbursement for. Have we already sought reimbursement for our expenditures on this grant to date?
Yes, we do reimbursements monthly for
Okay.
all of our grants.
So we would only be 30 days in on any
Pretty much.
expenditures on any Department of Education
Yes, ma'am.
originating or filtered funding?
Yes, either federal or state grant.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gatchmar.
For planning purposes, I know the court arguments Ms. Hall referenced earlier are Congress already voted to allocate these funds, and so the executive has to execute what Congress already approved. That's the argument anyway. Yeah, argument versus reality. But I'm just saying that's the argument. But for next year,
Right.
different administration, different control of Congress, a lot of this may not be allocated for the next budget cycle,
Right.
even though it has been for this. So when we plan, we just need to be cognizant of this might not be a multi-year program based, and we won't have the argument next year that Congress allocated the funds because they may not. So we just need to, sounds like you already know that.
Well, we're trying to navigate
Right. Now, be prepared.
as we can without knowing what the information is and not withholding opportunities from kids. I mean, what I fear most is that we become too conservative and withhold opportunities from kids, and then the money comes, and then we're scrambling. So it's a balance that I guess we're trying to strike between how we move forward, but we're also trying to forecast and predict and plan for the unknown.
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. That's a really good point, because we're in a continuing resolution, so we don't even really have this for this year. So we will know The resolution is authorized until March 14th, so we won't know before the March board meeting, but we will know by the April board meeting whether or not there are any cuts to this current year for education funds.
That's correct. Shit. But as Mr. Kashmar mentioned, I think we're going on the premise that those funds that have been allocated, hopefully they will continue to support those and fund those positions. Hopefully, but we never know.
He sees me making faces at him as a federal employee. You talk about hopefully will be allocated.
Trying to make you smile.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Ms. Hall.
I just want to say, if that becomes true, that even though these funds are already allocated, voted on and allocated, and we don't get them, we will have much more serious problems than just this.
Yes.
Okay,
You have one more, Mr. Moss?
I'm sorry, yes, Dr. Howard Hall.
From looking at this, is this related or tied with 21st Century? Or is that just one of the grants? I know
This is
that,
just one of the grants, part of Title IV. It's separate from 21st Century. They had to correct me on that, too. But 21st Century is up under Title IV as well.
okay. And I know also there's a HB 12, is it 1412 out there, HB 12, that talks about the Georgia legislative talking about the grants. That's a whole nother.
Yes, I can
talk
check
about
on
that
that. I know
later,
that's
yes.
in your wheelhouse.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, all in favor? Thank you.
Item 9.04, change order number 1, Savannah Arts Academy, McKnight Construction. On April 13, 2022, the board approved a guaranteed maximum price of $22,980,000 to McKnight Construction Company, Incorporated, for the Savannah Arts Academy addition and renovation project. The project is now completed and all costs have been finalized. The final cost is $21,990,153.02, which is $989,846.98 under the GMP. In accordance with the contract, all cost savings under the GMP at completion are returned back to the owner. Therefore, GMP change order number 1 reduces the GMP to the current contract amount of $21,990,153.02. Staff recommends board approval of GMP change order number 1 for the Savannah Arts Academy, and the superintendent supports this recommendation. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve GMP change order number 1 in the deductive amount of $989,846.98 to McKnight Construction Company, and a final contract amount of $21,990,153.02.
Your motion? Are you moving? Yes, moved and seconded, and now you have a comment. Yes.
This is quite a windfall for us. Dr. Watts, thank you for clarifying this for me. And I'm wondering now, does this $989,000, what fund would it be returned to?
Unallocated.
Unallocated. Okay.
Splash, yes, ma'am.
All right. And yes, well, this is quite a windfall for us. Very good to see.
I just
Ms.
want to
Grabowski,
say thank
and
you.
then Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you to McKnight for job well done, and to our team for job well managed. To be receiving $1 million back from a construction project in this day and age is kind of unheard of. So kudos to all.
Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
Thank you. I know when we were talking about looking at projects that were unfinished, that were finished, but that all the funds had not been consumed, that we were targeting them to do other projects. So what is the plan for this money?
Currently, it would just go back to unallocated. I don't think we have a plan yet for the expenditure of these funds.
I just remember in one of Mr. Batra's previous presentations, he said that we were moving towards identifying projects. So
You have any?
Have a list that we generated in which we'll be reallocating. I don't know about these specific funds.
Okay.
Like this specific dollar amount, but there were other unallocated dollars that were discussed in a previous meeting, and we do have a list of those projects and how they're going to be reallocated.
Okay, has that been shared?
No.
Okay, will we see that at some point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, hang on. Ms. Hall.
In addition to McKnight, I want to also commend the Pat Mathis Construction Company, who are the junior partner in this project. This is very well done.
Any other discussion? All right, this is one I really like to vote on. All in favor? All right, thank you.
Okay, item 9.05, RFQ C24-09, Geotechnical Engineering, Special Inspection and Materials Testing Annual Contract, first renewal. On December the 6th, 2023, the board approved the award of RFQ C24-09, Geotechnical Engineering, Special Inspection and Materials Testing Annual Contract to the following vendors: Contour Engineering, LLC, out of Tifton, Georgia; ECS Southeast, LLP, out of Savannah, Georgia; Goodwin Mills Kaywood, LLC, out of Savannah, Georgia; Terracon Consultants Incorporated, out of Savannah; Whitaker Laboratory Incorporated, out of Savannah; and WSP USA Environment and Infrastructure Incorporated, out of Savannah. Staff recommend exercising the first renewal option with all terms and conditions remaining the same. The estimated annual expenditure for the first renewal period is $1 million. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the first renewal of RFQ C24-09, Geotechnical Engineering, Special Inspection and Materials Testing Annual Contract to the following vendors: Contour Engineering, ECS Southeast, Goodwin Mills Kaywood, Terracon Consultants, Whitaker Laboratory, and WSP USA Environment and Infrastructure for an estimated cost of $1 million.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Thank you very much.
Item 9.06, C23-01, District-wide Furniture, Fixtures, and Equipment, FF&E for K-12 Media Centers, Annual Contract, second and final renewal. On January the 11th, 2023, the board approved the award of RFP C23-01, District-wide Furniture, Fixtures, and Equipment for K-12 Media Centers to the firm of Masons Incorporated. The award was for an initial term of 1 year with 2 additional 1-year periods. The estimated expenditures for the first period were $157,616.60 for elementary schools and $167,109.36 for secondary schools. On December the 6th, 2023, the board approved the purchase under RFP C23-01 for Pulaski K-8 Media Center furniture at an estimated cost of $162,012.36. On the January 15th, 2025, the board approved furniture purchases for the Early Learning Center at Henderson E. Formage Junior School, Bloomingdale Elementary School, and Windsor Forest High School, which included Media Center furniture under RFP C23-01. Staff now recommends renewal of the contract with Masons Incorporated under RFP C23-01 for the final annual renewal period through February 17th, 2025 through February 16th, 2026 for an estimated total expenditure of $600,000 as detailed below for those following schools: Largo Tibet Swing Site, Montgomery Swing Site, J.G. Smith Elementary, and Georgetown K-8 School. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the renewal of the contract with Masons Incorporated under RFP C23-01, district-wide furniture, fixtures, and equipment for K-12 media centers for the first annual renewal period with estimated expenditures for the final renewal period of $600,000. I'm sorry, that should be final annual period with an estimated expenditures for the final renewal period of $600,000.
It's been moved. Been seconded. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Wonderful.
Item 9.07, RFP C25-05, Construction Manager at Risk, CMR Services for Georgetown K-8 renovations. The Purchasing Department received proposals from 7 offerors in response to RFP C25-05, Construction Manager at Risk Services for Georgetown K-8 renovations. The initial intent of this solicitation was to establish a contract for Construction Manager at Risk Services for Georgetown K-8 renovations as outlined in RFP C25-05 for all related documents. Proposals were received from Carroll Daniel Construction Company out of Savannah, Dabbs Williams General Contractors out of Statesboro, J.E. Don Construction Company out of Savannah, M.B. Kahn out of Savannah, McKnight Construction out of Savannah, Samet Corporation out of Savannah, and TQ Constructors Incorporated out of Metter. Staff recommends RFP C25-05, Construction Manager at Risk Services for Georgetown K-8 renovations be awarded to J.E. Don Construction Company Incorporated with an initial stated cost limitation of $25 million. The scope of the work for the RFP includes the renovations and modifications to the Largo Tibet Swing Site to prepare this facility to receive Georgetown K-8 school after the 24 through 25 school year is completed. Construction documents for the Largo Tibet School are ready for release, and to keep this work on schedule, the CMR needs to begin issuing these documents for bids, awarding subcontracts, mobilizing, and starting construction at the Largo Tibet site as soon as possible. Therefore, this contract award would allow the CMR to incur costs and be reimbursed as part of the cost of the work in accordance with the contract. Pre-construction costs and CMR overhead costs and expenses to be reimbursed are a maximum of $2,913,000, including a 3.5% of the CMR fee. Thus, be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approve the award of RFP C25-05, Construction Manager at Risk Services for Georgetown K-8 renovations to J.E. Don Construction Company with an initial stated cost limitation of $25 million. It is further resolved to allow the CMR to commence work on the Georgetown K-8 pre-construction and Largo Tibet renovation phase prior to the submission of the final GMP. The board also approves payment of up to $2,913,000 for pre-construction costs and CMR overhead costs and expenses, including a 3.5% fee to be paid upon review and approval by the superintendent and district staff in the ordinary course of business, which may include submissions and review of pay applications after work is performed, and the applications are submitted by the contractor and reviewed by the design professional and district staff.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Hall?
Well, congratulations to J.E. Dunn. I was so happy to see on the list of criteria that the LMWBE program received points worth 15%, and then when they had a second initial meeting with the top 2 contenders, that there was a consideration of 20% for LMWBE participation. However, I do not see a partner, a junior partner from the LMWBE community listed in this proposal. I don't see Brownstone Construction, I don't see the Pelote Corporation, I don't see Pat Mathis Construction, or any other entity representing the minority community. So what has happened and what points did J.E. Dunn receive for 20% participation, and we don't see anything here in the contract?
I'm going to let someone from the design team come forward and explain the criteria that was used.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. First, let me just be sure it's clear that having a minority construction management partner is not a requirement of the RFP. The RFP, however, does require that the vendors give an explanation of what their LWMBE program is and how that program is going to best satisfy board policy. And then it goes on to explain or to ask each individual respondent to provide their proposed plan, to describe what their good faith efforts are going to be to maximize the utilization of LWMBE and to promote capacity building. So when they respond to the RFP itself, they have to respond to that question. They each put together their plan, their program. If they are going to be using a CMR partner in the management of the contract, that will be put in their plan. However, other vendors come forward with plans that use trade partnerships. So the response is asking, what program are you going to put forward that's going to best utilize, give us best efforts, and satisfy what the board policy is? That's what's being scored. And initially, it was scored at the 15% because there were a lot of other questions that were being asked and they had to respond to. When the short list was developed, then there were less questions, and that particular response came into 20%. Now, let me just also say that we have been asked before, okay, anybody can put anything in a plan. However, what's the proof? And this particular contractor, J.E. Dunn, has done four projects they've completed with us. And I only know from E2 on. I don't know if they did an E1 project or not, but they're on the 5th project with us. It's a total of over $207 million of construction. And they have documented proof that we presented throughout the course of E2 and into E3, just recently E4, the results of this. I won't go through them individually, but in local participation, they're averaging 66%. And in WMBE, they're averaging 23%. And that is one of our better producers in those areas. Every one of their projects have been completed on time. And they're working on Windsor Forest right now, and their schedule shows them, and we certainly believe that project also is going to be completed on time. So based upon their responses in the RFP and the grades that they received from the scoring team, they were the high score, and consequently, they were recommended for award.
Mr. Hudinger, we're launching an E5 referendum in March. I want the constituents of Chatham County to support that referendum. This is not a satisfactory way, as far as I'm concerned, to get there. If J.E. Dunn has given a list of the ways they're going to comply with our request, then we need to be able to see that. Traditionally, Dr. Watts, you haven't been here, but when we have a CMR at risk, a junior partner is named, and these are the three entities that have been most capable in terms of being a partner with our contractors, our prime contractors, Brownstone Construction, Pat Mathis Construction, and the Pelote Corporation. J.E. Dunn has certainly partnered with several of those firms in the past. For there to be no participation listed here from one of these entities or from any entity that just they gave a very good essay and narrative about what they plan to do without any written agreements with any of the people who represent our minority community, it's not satisfactory. And I feel that capital projects, those listed here on that selection committee, our purchasing department, are not carrying through with encouraging minority participation when we have these huge $25 million projects to give out to the community. If I expect people to vote for our East Blast, in addition to the wonderful schools we built for our children, that East Blast is an economic tool for us to use, then I expect for us to be transparent and diligent about keeping our promises to the community that we made when E4 was passed.
Dr. Brinkman. I'm sorry. Dr. Hoskins-Brown, then Dr. Brinkman, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm just quick. Normally, when we have something like this, we have like some scoring and we have some supplementary documentation. Why is all of that missing?
We don't.
We know.
We have scoring, but, okay. Go.
Okay, so wait, let's, people are getting reactive, and it's late.
Oh, I'm tired of lies.
So, I just asked, we normally have some supplementary information that tells us about the process. So what is it that is different about this?
Purchasing. That part, as far as the additional information, normally you get the scoring sheets. Did you not get the scoring sheets with this project?
No, we do not have a scoring sheet. We only have a resolution.
I've only ever gotten a scoring sheet for like one or two projects. I do not believe that that is our normal process unless we ask the district to provide those scoring sheets.
And that's the
I have
problem.
never had them just sent to me prior to a vote on any other construction project, only when we have asked.
The inconsistency is the problem.
Well, that's not an inconsistency.
It is.
That's
It
when
is
we
an
ask for it, they
inconsistency.
provide it.
Okay, so let's go back further.
Even
What
prior-
we need to go
even
back to
prior
is
to
our
you, Dr.
policies on
Brinkman.
how, what I want to ask is, we need to probably reevaluate our policies if we believe that we should get those scoring sheets before we vote. But the only time I have ever been a part of a conversation where scoring sheets were shared with me is when one of the board members reached out or myself. That is the only, it has not been normal district protocol for the last 6 years I've been on the board to get those scoring sheets with every RFP at any dollar amount.
So on some contracts we have, and I think the key word is inconsistency. On some contracts, we get them. On this one, we have not. I just wanted to know why we didn't, but.
I mean, we can get them.
Yes, we can
But
get them.
nobody asked for them. It was my understanding is what was just explained is how it has occurred.
I think what's conspicuous is there's a lot of language in this resolution about scoring. There's like 3 different paragraphs where the scoring is referred to, but we don't have the scoring. That's all. So if you're gonna make a resolution that you want heavily dependent upon something like that, then you just provide it. That's all.
I would agree that this is out of our normal resolution on some of the, of explaining the RFP process. I do not want it to be our normal to have the scores sent every single time because it is not my job to reevaluate how we have district staff evaluating those. It is our job to set policy, and we've been having this discussion in CIC to say, how do we want that to look so that when people do put in for an RFP, they understand the process, and we believe that the process is going on appropriately. If Ms. Hall does not believe that scoring is done appropriately, then a third party should be auditing it, not board members asking for scoring and saying, I don't believe that score is correct or not. So that's how I see this going, but I would love to know what in this process was done incorrectly to create the issues that we're discussing now.
Mr. Smith? Oh, you're, okay. Okay, Ms. Hall.
It's my contention that the purchasing department and capital projects is negligent in promoting the spirit and the substance of what the policy is asking for. Prior to E4, E1, E2, E3, in most of our schools that have been built, there was a primary contractor and a junior minority contractor. It slipped by me that Windsor Forest High School had no minority partner. That has been a big part of our presentation to the public, that we are using the East Blos funds as an economic engine in this county. If we do not deliver that, and if we just bypass it, and I'm saying that the people on this panel who have been here long enough to remember, Mr. Huntinger, you have been here, and you have seen the contracts as recently as the Savannah Arts Academy with McKnight and Pat Mathis Construction. So this isn't some, pie in the sky, revelation. Where is the push from capital projects and the purchasing department to make sure that our minority contractors are included in these huge sums of money we're giving out to J.E. Dunn and the other primary contractors? And I don't blame J.E. Dunn, because if we're not pushing it, then what do they need to do? Come and say, oh, you haven't asked us to keep the... We're not asking for it. The people who represent us on these panels are not pushing for it.
Ms. Grabowski, then Mr. Catchline, then I have a comment.
So I appreciate Ms. Hall's advocacy for the MWBE program. But I also heard during the staff presentation that J.E. Dunn has demonstrated their commitment to our MWBE program through the plan that was evaluated as a part of the RFP process, which is how it should be. And based on the records that you stated from J.E. Dunn, I did not write them down, but I believe you stated 66% local participation. Is that correct? And 23% of WBE. So if we have 2/3 of the funds remaining within our own community, I can't think of a stronger economic engine. And if they're achieving 23% on projects of NWBE participation, it may not be to the 3 large firms that were mentioned, but to me, that looks like it's going up to the smaller firms who even need the support even more. And so I like to see the diversification and the building up of those smaller contractors to be able to increase and improve their capacity over time, to increase the pool of contractors that we have to work with, and really build a robust ecosystem of diverse contractors across the board. So while I appreciate the advocacy, I do support the work that staff has put into this, and it seems to me that through the process and through the identification of the plan that was mentioned, that those are the criteria that we should be evaluating, in addition to the other criteria that are very important as we are selecting a contractor. Thank you.
Mr. Kachmar.
Ms. Hall, I'm going to ask you a question, if that's okay. I'm trying to understand the concern. Is the concern that there isn't a junior CMR partner identified here, or is the concern that all of the proposed ways in which this contractor is going to try to meet our LMWBE goals not listed? Like, for example, if we had received the list of all the trades, LMWBE trades that this contractor proposed working with, would that be sufficient, or is it your contention there should be a CMR partner?
I appreciate your question. The most efficient way to see that all of the contractors that Ms. Grabowski is speaking of usually comes under an organization. So say if Pat Mathis Construction was the junior partner, that is their whole purpose, to make sure that every possible company in Chatham County that can work on our projects will be involved. See, they professionalize it so that it's not, you know, oh, here's mock plumbing running over here and here's something over here. There's an organized structure to the labor force so that as many possible companies, you know, represented by local women, minorities are involved. So that's the efficiency of it. That's what I'm looking for. But if they gave us a list of 25, if J.E. Dunn gave us a list of 25 companies that they're going to be having business done with, yes, that would, in a way, you know, that would be this, in a way that would be it, but it wouldn't be the professional way of doing it, because you're talking about dealing with eeny, meeny, miny, mo, rather than going through a specific company that you're contracting in good faith to make sure that it happens. And since you've been on the board a little longer than me and Dr. Hoskins Brown, I know that you recall that for many years that's the way our CMR projects were delivered. And my contention is that it's the lackadaisical, why do we have to go through that? And to me, that's not what I want to present to the public when we're going out and asking them to vote for an East Plus 5.
Understood. I think we've all been on the board about the same time. It's been a long time, and we've had an evolution of our LMWBE approach. We both, I think, came in right at the beginning of E2, and we had several discussions about what our LMWBE process and policy should be and how do we grow that policy to get to the goals we wanted to get to. And so in E1 and in E2 a bit, there was a lot of CMR partnering, and we didn't do a lot of hard bid. We didn't do a lot of variation. And then, if I remember correctly, and somebody can look this up and tell me I'm wrong, but I think when we looked at our numbers every year, E1 and maybe E2, we were in the teens in terms of LMWBE participation. And I distinctly remember it was either E2 or E3, we had a presentation on what we had accomplished that year with our LMWBE goals, and it was in the high teens. And then we looked at surrounding municipalities who were celebrating 6% and 8%. And we were ecstatic. We were like at 19%. And so we said to ourselves, how can we grow this pie, increase the pool of small LMWB businesses and other LMWB businesses that can participate? And we talked specifically about expanding it to the subcontracts, not just the main contracts, to try to grow the smaller companies, the subcontractors, that we could help, grow that pool of in Chatham County. And the next time we looked at LMWB participation, we were up at like 24 or 26 or 28%. I think that was an E3, and we used that to go sell, not sell, but go, sorry, we can't promote, we can't sell. To go to share neutral information on no, but the point was our LMWB process has evolved over the years, and we've gone from the high single digits to the teens to the 20% as a district wide. And so I'm circling back to make a point, which is I agree with Dr. Bringman that we hire staff to run the scoring and the process, and we need to let them do their job. We shouldn't be second guessing them. If we don't like the criteria being applied, we need to rewrite our policy. And there's an opportunity for people who feel like they were aggrieved in that process to appeal. They can challenge. There's an appeal process, et cetera. I don't know if that's happened here or not. But there's certainly an option to say we were not scored fairly, or we don't think the criteria were applied correctly. And again, if we as a board don't like the evaluation process, we can write another policy. And then I hear what you're saying, and those organizations you've mentioned have been long-term partners with the district on various projects. But the bigger picture is if contractors are providing opportunities to LMWBE businesses I'd want a higher percentage, as opposed to there has to be these trades or a CMR junior partner. And unlike other contractors, they've got a long track record of actually delivering. So I'm going to support this resolution. I don't see any reason why. I haven't heard any problems with the bid process. I don't want to hold this up. And again, if we collectively as a board think that there's a reason to rewrite our policy to change the scoring or change the point of emphasis, that's certainly a discussion to have.
This would be a final remark. I think our policy is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with our policy. I don't think it's being implemented. And Dr. Watts, I'll just say to you, anything you can find out, I'll be happy to announce that I was absolutely wrong in error. But I feel that the spirit of what we're trying to do is not being carried through. Our policy is great. We don't need to change anything. And goodness knows in time, with what's happening in Washington, we may, not have anything. But for the few remaining gasps of air that we have, I would appreciate if you would take a keen interest in whether or not you feel our policy is being implemented by the persons representing us. Are the staff taking this seriously? Okay.
I have a couple of questions. And I haven't been here very long. But what I have seen when we've awarded these contracts, is in the process, none of these, the CMR is not necessarily naming their LMWBR, or whatever, companies. They're just saying, this is our commitment to, and this is our commitment and this is our plan. Is that correct?
They would, in their responses, name a WMBE if they're going to be participating in the management portion of the contract only. That's where that junior partner comes in.
Got it.
And I can only reinforce what Mr. Kashmar said, in that we did have, in E2, our CMRs did have partners. They were in the management. And I'll be bluntly honest, there were some pass-throughs in there. And our policy right now and our process right now in getting that work down to the level of the construction and building up smaller, we've got a number of contractors that have and could come in here and say, as a result of working on this particular project, I now can increase my bonding capacity. I now can go out and get better work. Not just on a management level, which is important, and it has been done, but now it filters down into the construction level. And J.E. Dunn is one of our champions.
Yeah. So our policy was not that we had to have an MWBE
No.
as.
No, it does not.
That is not the, because we can't do that, because by law, we'd get sued. Okay, that's hang on, that's part one. Part two, our policy is an LWMBE policy. It is not just a MWBE policy, correct? It is an LWMBE. Okay, so we're looking at J.E. Dunn. And thank you for giving us the background on what J.E. Dunn has done. And by the way, I don't think any of us should be promoting any company. Let's just put that out there right now. But what you said was they have finished projects on time. They had 60% local, that's the L. They had 23% MWBE. So what you're saying is, when you guys were looking at, and thank you, staff, for what you've done, because at the end of the day, what taxpayers, all taxpayers want to know is that we're spending their money wisely, and you spend their money with people that get the job done right and on time. And what you're saying is they did that. Plus, they did it with 60% local and 23% MWBE.
Yep. And let me add one thing, okay, because I forgot this. The plus was this particular CMR did Hess, Lowe, Williams, and Jenkins. 3 of those projects, let me go back in the board docs, 3 of those projects, they returned savings under the GMP.
So all of that would have been good in the resolution.
That's right.
That's what
Let's
you need in
see
a good
this.
resolution.
Dr. Brinkman.
No, you call me whatever, I'm fine. It's 4:40, we're trying to get, but, I mean, I said we'd have a short meeting, so it's all my fault. Thank you for bringing up board docs, and thank you for having board docs, because I've been over here digging through all of our last contracts, and I'm going to say I was wrong, because I'm at the Jenkins contract, has all the same language for the percentages in the Jenkins contract. Guess what's not named in the Jenkins contract? A junior contract. Guess what's named in the contract? All the people that sat on it, so the principal. Well, at that point, the Jenkins contract has Miss Harrington. She's retired. But here we've got the principal. So we are following our normal all the way back to that. I didn't have enough time. It took me a while to actually find that contract because, yeah. But but we're following the norms. And I mean, I know everybody wants to go home, but we could get the resident expert that's sitting over there under the reserve for media sign, and he's probably got the PowerPoint in his pocket to say how much money all of these companies have gotten from all of these contracts, because that's why I think we have them as a contractor for us to make sure that this policy is done. But I'll go back to my first, if we don't think we're doing it right in CIC, let's look back at how we're making this happen, and we can redesign what the policy looks like around the RFP awarding process. We can't tell them exactly how to do it, but I think we can build it with them if we don't think that it's meeting the needs.
Dr. Hoskins Brown.
Thank you. I have a deep desire for this to have been a short meeting too, so I'm not going to add a lot to it. I think that one of the essential things that we're missing in what Mrs. Hall is trying to convey is how people perceive how we're doing the work and how receptive they will be to our advocacy and education on eSPLOS based on how they see us transacting our business. So I still advocate for strong, effective resolutions that don't require 30 minutes of discussion to demonstrate the merit of the recommendation, because that's what we've had to do. We've had to talk for a half hour to get to all the things that are not here on the resolution that we're being asked to vote on. All of those salient points, all of that back information would have taken care of this. And really, the only thing that has not been addressed, which is Mrs. Hall's preference, and that's hers to articulate, is the presence of an LMWBE in a more prominent management role in this. And it's her right to want to see that and to not vote for this for not seeing it. But all these other things are not as subjective. They're just missing from what we have reviewed.
Okay. Any other discussion? Let's vote. All in favor? Thank you. I'm sorry? Opposed? Yes. Any abstentions? Nope. Thank you very much. All right. We have thank you. Yeah. Oh, here we go. We have one person that is here to speak, and it looks very exciting, actually. I like the topic, the thrill of the First Flight LLC. Mr. John Ratcliffe.
Pulling this off, I know it's striptease. I just want everybody to see the T-shirt.
Nice.
What we're about,
Wait, go to the microphone, please.
oh, okay, I shout so much.
Yes.
I'm ex-military, Air Force, so I can't hear. With me is Lexi. I don't try to pronounce her last name. She just got married and it's confusing, so Lexi. Lexi is a part of Savannah Aviation, which is one of the premier flight schools out of the Savannah Hilton Head Airport. And what we've done, my group, I got two groups that I'm representing. One is Black Pilots of America, and the other one is one that I just started 2 years ago called Thrill of the First Flight LLC, because when I would fly these kids, they'd get off the airplane, and all you see was a big grin. And I took that to mean that they enjoyed it. But our presence here is to first tell you what we do. We fly kids. Last year at the Savannah Hilton Head Airport, we flew 182 kids. That's a lot, because most of the parents don't want them to fly anyway. And why do we do it? Because it was available to me, and I try to make it available to everybody else. The program will be on March 29 of this year at the Savannah Hilton Head Airport at 34 Hangar Road, which is the Savannah Aviation Hangar. The sponsors you see on the sheet, Thrill of the First Flight, Savannah Aviation, and Living Hope Church, which some of you might be familiar with. Is that your church? You tell Miss Sylvia I said I was here, okay? All right. We got free flight opportunities for the kids. This year, we're going to limit it to 5th through 12th grade because last year we were overwhelmed. We had it 3rd through 12th grade. So this year's going to be a limit. You're going to sign up, the kids will sign up via Eventbrite. I think most of you may be familiar with that as an invitation-only kind of thing. They will be able to mingle with aviation professionals. We have air traffic control, pilots, flight attendants, airport maintenance, facilities maintenance, navigation maintenance, all kinds of things like that. And I will have 2 of my simulators available for those who might be afraid to fly. They can pretend. Hot dog, chip, pop, juice for the kids and everybody that comes with them. A real important piece you see on there, highlighted in yellow, youth must be accompanied by a parent or guardian.
Yes.
No drop-offs. Okay. And the last point is, last year we weren't able to do this, but this year I'm personally going to sponsor one individual for 16 hours of flight time to try to get them to a solo position so they can go ahead and learn how to fly. They will need to seek additional funds from other sources to continue that training, but we'll get them started. We're going to do that here in Savannah. We're going to do it in Statesboro and in Waycross. So if anybody wants to contribute, firstflightga.org, and you can contribute, and we'll give you a receipt online for your tax deductions. I'm not asking for money, but I am.
We can't thank you enough.
Okay, and that's the major part of our story. And I dropped all the business cards I had on the way in here somewhere.
All good.
But we're good. If you go to firstflightga.org, you can find all the information you need about us.
You're the best. Thank you so
I may not
much.
be the best, but I'm proud of myself.
Yes, Lexi, you may speak.
Yes. My last name is Gerganis. Just to say. But I would like to add that last year we did host this at Savannah Aviation, and it was a big hit. It was something that was a really cool experience. It was something that was a really cool experience to all the kids out there. And most importantly, it's not only an experience for the kids, but it also opens up a career in aviation. So kids, children that are in the school district may not really understand what aviation has to offer. So I think that's something that's very important and can definitely be an eye-opener.
Thank you very much. Please stick around. I want to talk to you. All right.
By the way, I turned 80 this month. That's right.
Oh, my God. All right, I'll accept a motion. Sean's already, okay, it's already been seconded. All in favor? Yeah. Thank you, guys.